Welcome to Flat Earth Debate Uncut, no, live. I'm your host, Nathan Oakley, and if you are new to this channel, or you've not done so already, then be sure to subscribe, hit the bell notification icon and join button if you'd like to become a Nathan Oakley 1980 channel member and keep up to date with the Flat Earth debate. If you would like to support the channel, there is a super chat that runs alongside each of these shows while they are live, and there's also a PayPal, Patreon and crypto link in the info box below the video. Also below this video you can get £50 for swapping your UK electricity supplier to Octopus Energy. Most importantly, if you'd like to join the discussion, simply mute the page you are currently watching, then click the link in the info box below this video to join the panel and express your views on the nature of Earth. If you do join, please don't swear. If you do, you'll be ejected, and if you are, please don't try to rejoin the stream using stock accounts. You'll be warmly welcome back on the next stream. Please also share the show on social media. Sharing the show obviously increases the live audience, but this in turn increases the chances of a more diverse panel, so please share the show on Facebook and Twitter. Now, we are joined by the Adam Meakin, 10th Man, Neil, Eli, and a whole bunch of people in Discord, so welcome one and all.
Good morning.
Good afternoon, everyone.
Afternoon, good to have you all. Any evidence of a physical geometric sphere edge horizon formerly known as the curve of the Earth?
Gonna need R for that, aren't you?
You are going to need R for that, Adam.
So, with that in mind, I would have to say no.
Bummer.
Sorry.
Any evidence of axial rotation of the Earth-based variety?
I'll follow that up with you're going to need R for that as well.
That's right, you are going to need R for axial rotation in radians. You're going to need an R for that. Any evidence of a self-perpetuating molten iron core at the centre of a presupposed spherical Earth?
You know what?
You're going to need a presupposed Earth center.
You're gonna need an R to know where that center is.
I think they say they know where it is. That's how they get their angles from the surface of the Earth. Isn't that interesting, Adam?
Now, assuming that they've never been there, I don't think anybody's ever made a claim then. Sadly then, to draw an angle to that, you'd have to know a distance, and that distance would be R. So
there's no evidence of a molten core inside of a gobstopper Earth.
There's no evidence of a molten core sextant operator.
Any evidence of the distance to the Sun?
Doesn't it take an
altogether.
AU?
What are we going to need for the distance to the Sun?
I need a sextant for that, and R as well.
if you're gonna use kind of standard measurement units, you are gonna need R for that. But you could describe it in Arwinian units, and it will be 3.
3 AU.
3 AUs, yeah.
3 Arwinian units. But
Yeah.
they're based
I
on
think
distance to rainbows.
Yeah.
They're not
That's
very
what I was
useful.
going to say. Yeah, it doesn't require R unless you're counting the R as the distance to a rainbow, and it's apparently, coincidentally, equivalent to 3 of those as well.
Do I need to ask the question again? Owen's not here to carry on that fast for you, Adam, I'm afraid.
Yeah, maybe you should then.
Hey, Sleeping Warrior.
Yep, Tony.
Any scientific evidence of gravity?
Well timed, wasn't it? I'll mute.
We get a sound check from you, Sleeping Warrior. I'm fully expecting you to blast my eardrums out.
Ah, sorry, I didn't realise I was on mute. See, I was waiting for the gravity question. See, there's a bit of a problem with the gravity question, isn't there? when they say that every story's got two halves, there's always two sides to a story, right? So, like typical example, you get a boyfriend and a girlfriend, they split up, and one of them starts being vicious, and then there's always two sides to the story. If you never get to find out that there's a second side to a story, you have no idea what really went on. And when you do find out the second half to the story, even then you don't really know. You just hear two sides to the story. The problem with gravity is none of us got taught that there was two sides to it. We all got taught that there was just the one side. But I got to 40 or 36 when I started to realize that there was another side to gravity that I didn't know existed. I just wish I'd have been told when I was 16. That's the problem with gravity. We're not taught anything scientific about it. We're taught the old position in gravity, not the current position in science for gravity. So how can anybody understand what the science for gravity is when none of us were taught it? That's the problem with gravity.
So gravity's got another side. Is it like a bit aggressive when it gets drunk or something?
Yeah, it's like a coin, isn't it? It's like there's the head side and there's the tail side. If it's got two sides to a story, it's called a morality, right? If it's got a morality, it's got two sides to it. But if you never know that the second side exists to be able to question, well, which one's right and which one's wrong, then you're always going to believe the one that you were told because you don't know what you don't know until someone points it out and says, hang on a sec, there's a different science here that none of us were all taught. And then what that then does is it breeds a direct conflict with 99% of us that didn't get taught the other sides of the coin, because 99% of people suddenly start questioning, hang on a minute, why didn't we get taught that? So the reality becomes 99% of people suddenly start questioning you about the stuff that's antiquated, and it becomes very murky, very hostile, very, very quick. But the answer to your question is, what scientific evidence is there for gravity? There is none. Most people don't even realize that it's a morality and there's two sides to it. Most people still think it's one and still push that it's one. I mean, Farmer's Boy, for example, he still tells people that mass attracts mass. He's been corrected God knows how many times with the current position by Einstein, and he either rejects it because he doesn't like it, he doesn't understand it and doesn't want to learn, or just doesn't like it because it just goes against his plethora of evidence that he thinks he's got for a ball. So he just dismisses it. But in any event, he still tells people that gravity is a force attracting mass between bodies that pull things together. And it hasn't been that way since World War II. That's a big problem, guys.
Well, I'd like to, because you said something there about gravity having no scientific evidence or validation, which presents a third option, which lets me know that the two sides is actually a false dichotomy. We don't even know if there is a thing at all.
You're absolutely right. So when I describe it as a morality, that a morality assumes that there is two sides to it, right? Which in most cases there is. There's two sides to every story, but you're right. It is a false dichotomy, but that's advanced flat Earth conversation that most people can't even get their heads around. They can't get their head around the fact that there's a second alternative, let alone a potential third. But you're right. There it is the morality that I'm talking about. We don't get taught about that. We don't get taught at school. That is two sides to a story that's actually a false dichotomy. There's actually three, and they definitely don't want us talking about the third one. But I think we should take little steps and say, well, there's a second side here that nobody ever gets taught, and that would explain why there's so much hostility against the notion that gravity is not a force.
Any single viable hypothesis from any of the fields of astronomy, cosmology, or astrophysics? Tap, tap, tap. Any single viable hypothesis from any of the fields of astronomy, cosmology, or astrophysics?
I think the best way to describe that one would be to cite Danny Faulkner. Dr. Danny Faulkner is an astronomer. He claims to have a PhD in astronomy, and he thinks he knows what science is, and he thinks he's got all the answers. Yet cites somebody on Blue Marble Science for gas pressure without a container. Dr. Danny Faulkner doesn't know what science is. Again, it's a common theme on their side because they're not taught it properly.
What a twonk. Any evidence you can have gas pressure without the necessary antecedent of a container to press upon?
See, I've been watching the show as best I could for the last few days, and I see a lot of chat in chat, a lot of conversation in chat about how no one agrees with Nathan about gas having no weight. And it's funny because unless you can stick it on a set of scales to measure the thing that you guys call weight, which is really a measurement of how far away from equilibrium an object is in the medium it's in, but unless you can stick it on a set of scales, gas cannot have any weight. So what they do to say, well, it can have weight because we can put it in a container. And then when it's in a container, we can then measure the difference and then we can subtract one from the other to get the weight. But it's got to be in a container to do that, which makes the Earth a contained container. Because if we have got atmospheric pressure and we have got weight to air, it has to be contained. But they ignore that and they claim that as their argument when it's actually our argument. There is no evidence for gas pressure without a container. It all disperses. It follows the free expansion of gas law, and there is no gas law that gives a directionality to gas. That debunks their claim.
Well, as you've described their conversation, the claim begins with a red herring fallacy in the first place. I don't know why they think it's okay to deal in logical fallacies, or is a red herring? Yeah, logical fallacies, because when they say, well, gas has weight, what does that have to do with it having to be contained or not? Not a damn thing.
Well, I have this out with Zorg. He comes in on different versions because he ends up getting blocked for overtly lying. The problem with gas pressure having weight is that the definition of weight is a defined term in physics. It's got a different meaning to what colloquially we understand to be weight. In physics, weight is defined as mass times the acceleration due to gravity. Well, we know that gravity is not a force and it doesn't accelerate matter, so that's a big, massive, fat zero. So if you multiply anything by zero, you always get zero. So that instantly rules that one out. But let's just say, for argument's sake, that we give them that one and say, well, where do you get the mass from? Unless it's in a container, it cannot have any weight because it disperses according to the free expansion of gas law. There is no gas law that gives any directionality to gas. So that also debunks their claim. So when they claim that gas has got weight, atmospheric pressure has got weight, and that's different to gas pressure, they can't satisfy either term of their own definition for the term atmospheric pressure, because you need to have mass, you need to have weight. You can't have mass without a container. You can't have weight without gravity being an acceleration, and they don't have any gas laws that describe this.
So you can't have atmosphere without violating the second law of thermodynamics. Air doesn't take the shape of its sphere, it takes the shape of its containment. Atmosphere just begs the question. See that sphere bit in atmosphere? Yeah, that's them begging the question.
And let me just respond to when they say things like, nobody claims that you have gas pressure next to a vacuum. They say that it's 0.1 next to 0.2 and 0.2 next to 0.3. So let's do what they do and plonk ourselves on Mars. And we look back on Earth from the perspective of Mars. You can see that Earth is a little sphere and it's got what they say is a gas pressure all around it. What is it that gives the gas pressure from the vacuum the ability to stick to the outside of the ball and create a pressurized environment in direct contradiction to the second law of thermodynamics? And they need a force. They don't have a force, but in their model they do. But in real world, when we apply the current science, not that I agree with the current science, the current science states clearly that it's not a force. So the current position applied to their model makes nothing, right? So you can't have the gas pressure doing what they say in their model. Just because it's in their model doesn't mean it's right. When you apply current science to it, their model fails.
Can you either put your pop filter on or turn the mic off axis to where you're talking, because you're putting plosives into your mic and it's setting my subwoofer off?
I'm just a little bit close.
I think it's the distance. It's just that you're talking directly into the diaphragm and it's popping it. To just turn the mic slightly off axis so your gusts of air go past the mic instead of into it. You don't have to get you.
Do we have to destroy my point with a tech talk?
People don't like plosives. What do you want?
I just want people to understand that when they say.
Hold on, Eli. Hold on. Let him summarise his point again. My bad, Anthony. Go ahead.
I just want people to understand that when they distinguish gas pressure from atmospheric pressure, they can't satisfy their own term because the correct interpretation of the definitions that they use to cite those terms, their own definition doesn't describe what happens because the physics doesn't support it. I don't know what the term is other than complete shit. That there is no explanation for what they get wrong. It's just wrong.
Yeah, Eli.
Yeah, I was only saying that now I have a whole bunch of noise in the background. Okay, good. No, I was saying yes. I appreciate you explaining that, and I encourage you to explain that they don't have a definition for weight right now. If they go with the current rhetoric, that they live on a ball with gravity being the bending of space-time. I really like that because for some people, this is what's required for them to break their trance in this whole paradigm. I didn't even understand it, and I'm glad for you for helping me understand it more.
I was describing this to somebody just recently, that when you look at the definition for weight in its normal sense, we all know what it means, but in science, it's mass times the acceleration due to gravity. The problem is that acceleration due to gravity is zero when you apply current science to their model. Now, that means that it invalidates their model, but they come back with, well, it is in our model. Well, in your model, when you apply current science to it, the acceleration due to gravity is zero because, and I quote, the current position in gravity in science today, it is the apparent acceleration of a non-accelerating matter that gives the appearance of an acceleration when there is none. That's why it's not a force. It's a bit like a boat on the horizon refracting in the heat haze. It's shimmering up and down, and you're watching it squash and shrink and stuff, and you know that it's the medium causing it. That's what that's what gravity is. So in the Eddington experiment of 1919, this is the claimed proof that they claim for general relativity, right? And it disproves their claim for gravity having a force because it showed the stars in an apparent position that was supposed to be slightly different to where they physically are, caused by the mass of the sun during an eclipse. It wasn't an actual acceleration, it was an apparent acceleration. That's why gravity is not a force. So if you understand it's nothing more than a lensing effect, in other words, like refraction, then it doesn't accelerate mass. It just bends space-time around it. And that's what we perceive as acceleration, but it's not actual acceleration. There is no force. So therefore, in the equation, weight equals mass times the acceleration due to gravity. That acceleration isn't due to gravity. It's perceived only. It's a big fat zero. That debunks their model. They need weight and they need it to be ascribed to gravity, but they don't have it. And that Eddington debunked it in 1919.
Sure. I mean, I'm going to give credit to Brian, actually. While I reiterated Brian's point, and people have latched on to me because I've reiterated Brian's point, all credit to Brian. He's where I was supporting his point when I made that point. But what I used was a woman floating around. Now, if you cast your mind back 5 or 6 years to early stages of Flat Earth debate, not the show, but the discussion itself, you'll probably recall people saying, well, if it wasn't for gravity, you'd just float off. Yeah? Right. Yeah. So, in other words, if it wasn't for gravity, we'd have no acceleration down, and therefore we wouldn't be moving down even when we're completely stationary in the medium we're in. So it'd float off. Hold on, Anthony. So it'd float off, right? Well, what does gas do precisely? Does it pool on the ground? Is it held down 9.8 meters per second when it's stationary in a puddle, not floating off in all directions? No, it's effectively, by their own description, weightless, because it's floating off in all directions, not going down. So when they tell me, oh, you'd float off if it wasn't for gravity, what, like gas? Like weightless?
That's a good point.
Well, let's apply what Nathan's just said to their definition.
I don't know about you guys. I just tripped over some gas earlier. I don't know about you guys.
Let's just apply what Nathan's just said into their maths. Because you know what they're like for maths, right? Gravity pulls everything down on they think that, right? So if we multiply the average mass, not weight, the average mass of the average adult, let's just say round figures, it's 100 kilograms. Then you add the 9.8 meters per second squared, the acceleration due to gravity. But then you remember the acceleration isn't due to gravity, it's perceived only, and it's actually a zero. That means that the 100 kilograms times by zero becomes 0 newtons. Therefore, in their model, applying the current physics, their model fails because they think that all masses are weightless when you apply the current physics. It debunks their model. We don't need to have any more conversations. It's game over. Why do we need to become experts in every single field of physics? We don't have to debunk every single claim. We just need to debunk one, and that one claim is over because mass times 0 equals 0, and therefore your model does not represent reality.
Anyone got any further comment on gravity before I move on to radius?
Damn, I said I tripped over gas. I didn't even get a haha. Like the hell.
I
Good morning, guys.
I latched onto your
there, chocolate.
I latched onto your sarcasm and made it into an actual worthy point. Now, maybe audience members laugh, but your point's worthy, right? Sarcastic or otherwise, you're saying you're not tripping over gas, and that's a worthy point of expansion. Boom, boom.
I was only going to say I'm getting
That's
coming into my shed every single day and having to sweep out the gas that keeps accumulating on the floor overnight. It's
chocolate.
I had a really good one the other day. Someone said, how did mustard gas work in the war then? And the answer is they chucked mustard gas in towards the trenches because it's more dense than the air it's in, right? Not being pulled by gravity because we know it's not a force. It's just more dense than the air it's in. But over a few minutes or maybe 30 minutes, 40, an hour, that mustard gas disperses into the medium in accordance with relative density, right? Because there is that thing where it'll just disperse, right? But it's not staying in the trench, which is what it would do on their model. So even that mustard gas still went up, not stayed down. That's a problem for them.
So it's not in line with relative density, although that is our description and you can apply it. It's in line with the second law of thermodynamics. When you describe dispersion, that's an entropic effect. Shout out to Gourdzilla37. All my gas has so much weight, oh God, that the people in the apartment below had me to be hospitalised. Let's just read that again. All my gas has so much weight that the people in the apartment below had me to be hospitalised. Yeah, it was just badly written.
Chocolate. I got a question for Chocolate.
What's up, man?
Yeah, the reason that you didn't trip, was it because you were wearing your Air Jordans?
Yeah, I just jumped over the gas, right?
So let me just address Bobby Steele's in chat. He says, gas clearly has weight though. Why deny it? It doesn't have weight unless it's in a container. If you can show us gas having weight in a vacuum, be my guest. But until that evidence
weight is down, right? Anthony, weight's a downward vector.
No. That's what they want you to think. Because
I'm going by their rhetoric. According to this guy you're talking to.
Yeah, by their rhetoric, yeah.
Yeah, they've got a downward vector to apply.
Yeah.
Right. So gas, yeah. Let's say that some of it, if you use this false, what's the word? Convention to define gas, right? You can say some of it is heading down towards the scale, bounces off the scale, and in this case, you're saying mustard gas is more dense. That's your argument, right? But I just say no. You just put it in a room and you can see the scale go up, right? But as you've already described, gas expands in all directions, yeah? Through the gaps in the other gas with an entropic effect you've also detailed called dispersion. Now, that being the case, that would mean that some of the gas, mustard gas, is moving away from the scale. Would you agree?
Of course.
So how do you qualify the quote-unquote weight, that would be the force in a downward vector, for the mustard gas that's not going down? How'd you weigh that?
Well, we ignore that because it's an inconvenient truth.
That's still mustard gas going up, but doesn't have a down vector 9.8 meters per second squared and isn't affecting the scale in any way, shape or form. It's going up. So how'd you give it a down vector?
This is the conundrum. This is the reason why they can't join.
Not a conundrum. You don't. That's the answer.
Correct.
Quick shout out to Retro Bill. At a distance of half the Earth's radius, objects suddenly become weightless. Right. Where is the demonstration of this? Oh, right. You're asking. Indeed. Thank you for the super chat, Retro Bill.
I've got something.
What radius?
I've got something I was just thinking about.
Well, we're moving on to that.
I know why gas is heavier. It's moving slower at ground level. That's why.
Heavier, slower, if it's going up, regardless. It's going up. It's not going down slower if it's going up. It's not going a bit less down. It's just not going down at all. It's going up.
Well, I'm just thinking of Einstein's theory. Time runs slower at ground level than it does at the higher level. So that's why. Come on now, Nathan.
Time?
That's why.
What do you mean time runs slower? Time is a convention. Have you bastardized this convention into physical reality there, Paul, and are now telling me that we've got differences in time, a convention, at different heights? What crock of crap?
That's what the science says, and that's what the equations come up with.
Sorry, that's what the science, that's what the equations. Whoa, 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 cowboy. What?
That's what they tell us. I'm just saying. I'm not an expert, but that's what they say.
I like Sleeping Warrior's answer to this. Well, they don't have weight defined if they're going with Einstein. So it's weight. There is no weight.
Well, if they go with Einstein, it invalidates the maths for weight. So they do have it defined, but Einstein application invalidates it because the acceleration is zero. But let me just say this one last bit again. When they talk about gas pressure, right? Which gas law gives gas a direction? Because there isn't one, but there is one on our side that says it expands freely in all directions. It's called the free expansion of gas or the dual expansion of gas law, but they don't have one that's got a directionality to it. That in itself is a massive hole in their argument, and they completely ignore it.
The other day, Virus made a comment in the YouTube saying something about all the gas laws presuppose a container. But why do you think that is? I never got a response to him from that because we went into a whole other shit. But it led back to that, and he refused to answer that question. Why do you think that is, Sleeping Warrior?
It's because if you don't have a container, the free expansion of gas law dictates what the gas behavior will do.
Whoa.
Come on, the time thing, that contains it.
Without the container,
there'd be
no pressure.
That's 4 people all at once. Paul, go ahead.
I say that it's the time thing. I just talked to you about it. That's containing the gas, the time differential, the dilation. That's what's causing it.
Sorry, the reified concept you've just tried to force down our throats of time and its difference when applied incorrectly is now a container, did you say, Paul?
That's what they're saying. Again, it's the science, Nathan. It's the science, man. You're a science denier. Don't you accept the science?
Sorry, no, I'm not a science denier. You haven't given me any. You've just made a blow of nonsense. Al Junkie, to solve the issue, we ought to ask a gastronomer. We'll meet him at the gastropub.
That's a song. If I could save time in a bottle.
But Paul, okay, you gave me a lovely story. You said it's the science. Okay, great. How is this knowledge verified? How can I verify it?
Let me just.
Or can I just dismiss it as not knowledge if there is no validation?
One other thing with respect to a common claim that they claim that gravity is the container. Well, because gravity doesn't act on matter, gravity only applies to non-accelerating mass. That's the thing to remember. Gravity doesn't apply to anything accelerating. So you need a force for something that's changing direction or speed. So because gravity doesn't do that, it only applies to things that are not accelerating. So it doesn't apply in this context, but they need it to apply. So that's why they make it into a force, but it's not one. So because gravity is not a force, it cannot be the container. It's literally that simple.
What's gravity?
It's an apparent acceleration of a non-accelerating object, like a boat on the horizon shimmering. It's nothing more than refraction.
Okie dokie.
It's a cool story.
Can we move on? Any evidence of the R value? That would be Earth radius.
Black Swan. Sextant.
No,
I'd be typing clickety clackety there, Anthony.
no, that was the dog changing his position, Nathan. It wasn't typing.
With you. Oh, is
Not
that your dog
guilty.
changing your position with the mic wide open, Anthony?
Yeah. He gets off his comfy cushion, moves next to his cushion onto the hard floor, spins round and sits down, and in 2 minutes' time, you'll hear him doing it again, going back onto
Bear
the
with
cushion.
me. Hold on. Got breaking news from the Peanut Gallery, a.k.a. the Trolls, a.k.a. the Anti-Flat Earthers. They say your dog's dead, Anthony. What gives?
Oh, well, see, you've just heard him in background, so I don't know. Is that good enough evidence to indicate he might not be? It wasn't typing.
I'm pretty sure that's you doing it intentionally, so this subject comes up. Dun, dun, dun!
I can get him on camera. He might
No,
be a
thanks.
bit grumpy, but
I'm
I can
good.
do it.
I've seen him. I'm happy. I know he's alive. I've seen him. Yes. When I last fussed him, he was very much alive, and I can hear him in the background now, ruining the live show. I mean, letting us all know he's alive and well.
They're still going to accuse you of slipping them, Mickey.
Well, they can accuse me of all sorts of things.
If he wasn't alive and well, Riley wouldn't have had me doing dosage calculations this morning. Pointless.
Correct. Because someone's changed his meds.
Funny when you have no proof that you live on a magical
Hold
spinning
on,
water ball.
Chocolate. Sorry. Let me get it straight. What fallacy did Adam... I know it's...
Affirming the consequence.
So basically, if dosage calculation, then dog alive. That was what we just got from Adam. I'm not even joking.
Yeah.
So by that standard, Adam,
Yep.
if NASA wouldn't be doing the calculations for the fuel if they weren't actually going there, right, Adam? By that standard.
That is, if you just take that as what I said, there was a little caveat. Riley wouldn't be wasting my time. Or why would he be wasting my time? It would be one hell of a pretense. But yeah.
Perfect.
Do you know what makes it different?
Out.
Do you know what makes it different? I can actually prove that the dog is alive by getting him on camera right now if I wanted to, if it was really important and I could. You know, like, it's not that I don't want to pander to the ball earthers. Like they say NASA don't want to pander to the flat earthers. I could actually do that. But they can't do that. So they need an excuse why not to do it.
Okay. Well, I can fire a laser beam at the reflectors they left. And why would NASA waste our time doing the calculations for the fuel that they'd use if they didn't do it, Adam? Why would they waste our time like that?
Oh, brilliant. Al Junkie, a dog's universe solely consists of bark matter. That's brilliant.
Al Junkie, thanks for the super chat. That was the best fun for quite a considerable amount of time, Al Junkie. Very good.
It took the biscuit, that one.
Bark matter. That's absolutely brilliant.
I spotted it, Meekin, even though Nathan didn't.
It came through later for me than it did for you. So Adam, literally though, one of the things they do apply as an argument is the calculations of the fuel they use when travelling through the second law of thermodynamics violation sky vacuum.
Yeah, I would agree. And if that was the only evidence, other than the dog at the other end of the Skype and a grown man, you know, texting you late at night saying, "How do I sedate my dog because I'm scared of him?" There's other preponderances of evidence that support that calculation.
That sounds familiar.
To be fair, though, to get his nails clipped, it did take 3 adults to pin him down, so it wasn't an unjustified fear.
Got to be blunt with Anthony now. Subtly tried 3 times to segue away from dog and onto NASA. He's just not having it. He wants to talk dog.
So Zorg9 says, who agrees with Nathan when he says that gases are weightless? We've already dealt with that, but you're welcome to join and tell us how gases are weight, or have weight if you wish. But the reality is, without a container, there is no weight. You've got to be able to weigh it.
That seems like an intentional ploy. I've noticed that as a pattern. You'll cover something on the show or in the chat, and without recognition or acknowledgement, they'll just circle jerk immediately back to a point that's already been covered. So the first words off Anthony Slit's were, "That's just been covered." In fact, covered with a few new aspects added in for good measure. What, should we rehash it because somebody from the chat is like, "Does gas have weight?" Well, according to you guys, if I didn't have gravity applied to me, I'd float off. Like gas. I'd be weightless, right? I'd float off. Like gas. So you tell me, it's your paradigm, using your terminology, you fundy idiot. That's why I had a woman floating around with word G on her sweatshirt. Yeah? She's talking about G and how much of it there is. And she's claiming to be in 0G, therefore floating around. What does gas do? Does it go down, go boom boom, 9.8 meters per second? Or does it just float around like that chick was demonstrating? Yeah? Oh, what's that? It's actually going down. Well, that isn't the illusion she was trying to portray now, was it? All the windows were painted shut, so you didn't notice the fact that she's falling down. When she's actually falling, and you keep the camera stationary on her in a completely sealed off plane where you can't see the outside world, it looks like she's floating around. Precisely like gas does. And how does she describe floating around? Oh, she says it's being weightless. But what, it's a stretch for me to use your vocabulary and vernacular to say that gas is weightless? I don't think so.
There has been a rebuttal from our side on this gas pressure thing, Nathan. I won't ascribe it to anybody, but one argument was, see, over time, it gradually reduces its kinetic energy because it runs out of energy. It's a bit like the Simon Down one where he says it runs out of energy and comes back to Earth because it runs like a car running out of fuel. So he says it gradually loses kinetic energy. What do you say to that?
What, it reaches absolute zero? Does that, Adam?
Well, he says if you put a certain amount of like gas.
No, I heard the claim. I just sensed Adam's voice coming through that with the same disdain I was about to launch into, but I've had enough already. Adam, feel free.
I'm just going to ask, what is the thing that's taking the kinetic energy away from the gas particle? That's
I don't know, and I wanted to know: did he understand that elastic collisions were caused by collisions, not inelastic? And I didn't get any answer from it, so it's an ignorant answer, unfortunately, from our side. But that was the claim. That was what was said.
It's when the gas reaches the magic speed.
Yeah.
Well, that was what I was going to go on to.
That is its kinetic energy, in a simple term, and that's kind of regulated with PV equals nRT, but fundamentally it's the T. So that previous statement would mean, I'm assuming you're keeping the T constant with you if you leave it over time, not leave it to cool down or anything. But if you do take that, then it's wholly false. The kinetic energy, if the T stays the same and the other parameters stays the same.
Yeah, I think he sees it as like buckyballs, where they're bouncing off the walls but losing a little bit of energy each time they make the bounce. I think that's how he sees it.
How does a gas stop, Adam? Under what circumstances?
Theoretically, it would stop at absolute zero because that's when its kinetic energy would be zero, I think. So, but that's a theoretical place, isn't it?
So for his explanation to make sense, the gas would have to run out of kinetic energy. That would be to reach absolute zero. And as a result of reaching this theoretical idea of something that's never ever experienceable, it would then have gravity take over to bring it back down at 9.8 meters per second. Wow.
That's my only thing, that in some way gravity has a methodology not postulated by anyone, but of taking away kinetic energy over time from gas particles. That would
hold on. Where's that in PV equals nRT?
It's not.
It's not? Oh, right. What's the V?
Oh, that'll be a volume.
Volume of what?
Well, the containment.
The volume of the containment for the gas. Yeah. And the pressure would be the what force it exerts on the walls of that containment.
Mm-hmm.
And that's dictated by what? The temperature and what now?
The temperature of the temperature and that then defines the speed of the molecules, their kinetic energy, so the force in which they then hit.
Go back to absolute zero. Force. For there to be no force, it would have to be, in terms of the T measurement, zero. Correct?
Yeah. It'd stop vibrating, and therefore they wouldn't be behaving like gas anymore. Would they? They just because they're not vibrating.
No, not necessarily. What it would mean is it put no P, right? There's no longer any pressure. So there's no pressure, but there is no G in PV equals nRT. So where's it runs out of energy and then comes back down to Earth, go boom, boom. Where's that in the equation?
It's not in that or any other. It's not considered in any, I think Riley mentioned it, any of the gas behaviour laws. It's never mentioned.
So who came up with this, Riley? This complete tripe? You say Simon Dan? I don't know, I can't remember. I'll think about it. Thanks, Anthony.
Mickey's here.
Oh, sorry, what was the question?
Who came up with this complete tripe of reaching absolute zero, losing all T, therefore having no P, and then after the fact, even though it's not part of the equation, going down, go boom, boom, 9.8 metres per second after it reaches absolute zero? Who came up with this complete crap?
Well, originally it was conspiracy cats. That was his explanation for why gas pressure will come back to Earth.
It's complete nonsense.
I know. It's a violation of Newton's first law.
So, from the guy who said without the container there can be no pressure, he also thinks that gas will go down, go boom, boom after reaching absolute zero, even though there is no G in PV equals nRT. What's he babbling about?
Correct. Well, he thinks that because you can calculate it with the Boltzmann formula, he thinks that that makes it a suitable correlation, but he ignores that it's a correlation. He ignores the cause, and the fact is that gas molecules change in direction to go from up to down require a force. That's Newton's first law of motion. An object in motion or a gas molecule in motion will remain in motion unless acted upon by a force. Well, they haven't got gravity as a force. That only applies to non-accelerating matter in the current science. So they haven't got a force to bring it back. So that gas molecule is going to keep continuing along its path and nothing's going to change it unless it's a force. Well, they don't have one. So, yeah, Conspiracy Cats is completely wrong. That's why he avoids that answer, that question, at all costs. That's why he's lingering on sock accounts, because he won't stand up in his own name and stand up for the science that he teaches, because he hasn't got any science. It contradicts current laws. He hasn't got a gas law to describe this downward perception or direction. None of it works, and that's why he disappears like a fart in a colander.
Boltzmann hasn't it got an aspect of entropy inside the Boltzmann formula? It's been a while.
Well, it's a probability distribution calculator, isn't it? So it plots where the probability of the distribution will be, not the actuality of it. It doesn't relate to anything. It's based on ideal gas law. It's not based on actual gas behavior. It's just another correlation, a calculated correlative.
You missed my point.
Should happen.
You missed my point. So it's going to need a V then.
It's going to need G, yeah. It's going to need G and V.
V.
Yeah, it's going to need G and V.
Where's he getting the V from?
Well, like Professor Dave says, you don't have to have an actual container. It can be any conceptual or imaginary container.
Stop. I don't give a crap what Professor Dave said about you don't need a container for a conceptual gas. No, that's right. And I don't need a farmhouse for a conceptual unicorn. Do I, Dave? However, when we're dealing with actual gases, there are things that you do require. One of them would be containment. So where do they get the V? You can apply Boltzmann. You're still going to need a V. Where are they getting it? Oh, theoretic. I don't care. We're talking about the gas I breathe, not your mathematical formula where you can conceptualise how gas behaves. I want to know how that works in reality. Where do they get the V?
I want to know where they get the G from.
There is no G. What G? Gas doesn't have this applicable. We've debunked it earlier. Gas does not go down, go boom, boom, 9.8 metres per second. Well, if gas has mass, as it does in their world, then it's violating their ideas of what gravity is. So we haven't got a G. There is no G.
I was applying the formula weight equals mass times acceleration due to gravity.
What's mass?
Forget that. Where's the G come from?
Why? What's mass?
God knows.
Well, in their world, gas has mass. In the real world, it's an equivocation fallacy.
This is why we need people like Zorgi that, rather than troll the chat, which we allow you to do, Zorgi, as long as you're relatively kind, you need to be joining the panel and giving us all your science, because there isn't any science for your model. And when we apply the current science, your model gets debunked. You just don't like it.
Overcrowded Discord server. 14 people in there.
So my point being with all that, Tony, was I don't think it's reasonable to make the assertion that you've got this changing kinetic energy of gas caused by G with not even a mathematical description of how it happens. As far as I've seen, I've not seen even a theoretical supposition, just in the maths of how it could happen. So never mind a practical demonstration.
Okay, I'll put it out there. Adam's asking for a mathematical description of how gravity affects entropy. We'd like to see that, please.
Yeah. And I'm asking for a gas law to describe a directionality to gas, because we've got one that describes what happens when, like, it freely expands in all directions. There is no direction to it. So therefore, by exclusion, there can't be a gas law for a directionality to it, because we've already got one that says that there's no good directionality to it. So where is the heliocentric gas law that governs what's going on in your model?
It better not have a V in it, because if it has got a V in it, you're going to need to show the volume applicable to Earth as a sphere-shaped air in a vacuum, right? We're going to need a volume for that gas to be in. Obviously, in your heliocentric fantasy, you don't have a volume for your gas. You've got an arbitrarily assigned Kármán line. Now, that doesn't give you a volume, because there's more space beyond that arbitrary line. So we're going to need a V if it's got a V in your explanation for gas law being affected by gravity when it's not in any of the laws.
Yep.
Nobel Prize for the man that actually integrates gravity. That would be the conceptual bending of pseudo-Riemannian force space, having an effect on something we actually experience in our day-to-day lives. That would be entropic effects like dispersion. It's not going to happen.
Let me just I don't think Zorg 9 is actually listening, but I want chat to know. He was saying something about Nathan rejected Katz's offer for a debate. Well, I accepted Katz's offer for a debate, and I even told him the one question that I wanted him to answer, which is, how do you have gas pressure without a container? And he won't do it. So it's like, it is his kryptonite. The effect on kryptonite with Superman is the same effect on conspiracy cats with gas pressure without a container. He literally runs from it.
I asked him for R, and I was told by the so-called unbiased moderator that was an unreasonable thing to ask for a concession on. It's like, hang on a second. We've debunked the R value that every single argument is based upon. Now, the person that we're debating in this instance, I've been on Anthony's channel debating cats, with his funny muting of me, tolerated by Anthony, as it would be. And ultimately speaking, I've asked him dozens of times for the R value, some of which he highlights in his videos. A point I made clear to the guy who was claimed to be impartial. He subsequently made an anti-flat earth video about Antarctica. I just thought I'd drop that in, given that it was days after I was being told that it was a neutral platform. He's come out with an anti-flat earth video. How interesting. How very neutral. Meanwhile, I accepted, but asked for R, because I don't want to rehash old arguments where they're talking about drop values based on distances to geometric physical horizons. That would be Earth curve. We've debunked all that. So what I actually did was ask for R. Did I get it? No. Now, I agreed to debate cats. And as far as I'm concerned, as the guy cut me off, after me saying you're being unreasonable, all I'm asking for is you to give me something that I've asked for on multiple occasions, and I can give examples where in a live discussion he's asked for things multiple occasions, literally dozens of times, and won't answer them. So I want to know that I'm going to get an answer if I'm going to ask for R, and the unbiased moderator, in quotes, told me that was unreasonable to ask for. So what do you think I was going to get if I actually debated him? I'd ask for R, and I'd be told I was asking for something unreasonable by the unbiased moderator, wouldn't I? Because that's precisely what happened. I asked for R via email, and I didn't get it. So, via a third party, I didn't get R from cats. Do you think I'd get it in live discussion, or do you think it'd segue away 25 times? And then eventually I'd get told, stop asking. Yeah, I think I know which way it'd go down. That's why I asked for the concession in advance. Why would I want to go through the humiliation of being told, no, you're not allowed to ask for R, because the moderator's already told me that's precisely what's going to happen? Should I come against him with him as the moderator? Nice anti-flat earth video, by the way, Pat. Nice to see your modest, I keep saying it modest, your unbiased status remained as such. What a joke. Yeah? Meanwhile, I asked for R and agreed to debate him. He could still give it me. I'd meet him tomorrow. On any platform he likes. Just tell me how he measured R, and I'll meet him wherever he likes. Give me an R measurement. Obviously not one we've ripped to pieces already. That would be silly. So that's all I'm asking for. Take it as read. Anybody watching this right now, I will debate Cats wherever he likes. He just needs to give me a measurement for R. You know what that sounds like? Precisely what I told the moderator. Pretty much verbatim, in fact. So what I asked for then, I'll ask for now. Do you think he'll give it me? Hey, Nathan Oakley, 1980 at AOL.com, Cats. Email your measurement of R. I'll meet you wherever you like. Yeah? Oh, what's that? Stony silence will be the response, because he hasn't got R. We've debunked it. He damn well knows it and needs a moderator that'll tell me it's unreasonable to ask for it. That's what Cats needs, doesn't he? From a claim to be unbiased moderator who's making anti-flat earth videos. And will tell me how unreasonable it is to point out how dead your model is, because you haven't got R.
Let it out, Nath.
You up?
Let it out. Don't hold back.
I don't. Ever.
I just want to give a shout out to Tommy Hench. He asked Conspiracy Cats, I think it was either 17 or 19 times, how do you have gas pressure for that container? And in the end, eventually, when he weaseled an answer out, he just said, we don't need it. We just need the gas. Oh, really? So gas is just what? A coagulate is a cloud? Can we see that, please? Tommy wasn't expecting that answer. I don't even think he was expecting any answer. So he didn't think about the answer given, but it took him 17 attempts to answer that. So Cats, how do you have gas pressure without a container?
He also didn't expect the remix of the question. You know, he was told that the question that you're asking isn't correct. What you should be asking is, how do you have pressurized gas without a container?
And I never really understood that. Somebody has to explain to me what the difference between pressurized gas and gas pressure is. I didn't get that, what he was trying to get at in that.
There isn't a difference. Pressurized gas or gas at pressure, it's exactly the same thing. You're going to require containment for both. Without the container, there can be no pressure. End quote, Conspiracy Cats. I'd like to see that also, Anthony. Oh, right, you just need the amount of gas. So dispersion, second law of thermodynamics doesn't apply. It's not going to expand into whatever volume it has available to it. It's going to stay in a designated area that you assign to it in mathematics. No, you've got a V in your PV equals nRT. And if the volume is the size of the room you're in, the gas is going to fill that. If there's an open window or even a tiny little crack, eventually the entropic effect will take hold and the gas will escape through the little hole with enough time. It's called entropy. So no, you don't just arbitrarily assign an amount of volume and say, well, the gas will just stay in there. No, it doesn't. Shockingly, it needs containment.
I was informed on Jim Panda's server that they don't need a container for the atmosphere because the gases in the atmosphere do not expand in all directions.
That's what gas does by its very nature. Further to that, where are they going to get sphere-shaped air from? So begging the question of a sphere, you're going to need an R value for your atmosphere. Where'd you get R? Oh, it's back to that same problem that Conspiracy Cats needs to spin into me running away from him when I'm merely asking for an R value for all the assumptions that they make. One of which being sphere-shaped air, atmosphere. You're going to need an R value for that. For you to then arbitrarily tell us that gas doesn't follow gas behaviour anymore because it's suddenly in sphere-shaped air? Well, where's your R value for that assumption? You're going to need that. I'm going to want it for you to make that claim of sphere-shaped air. I thank you.
Well, they say, at least I think I understood that it was because of the gradient that's proof that the gases in the atmosphere don't expand.
Sorry, because of the gradient. Sorry, that means they have expanded. The fact that there's a gradient means that they have expanded into the available volume.
Next time, ask them where that gas was produced. Then ask them about their gradient. Ridiculous.
Yeah, for the gas to be up on the top of Everest, where there's very little vegetation, if any, at the top, yeah, there's still gas there. Well, is that because it went down, go boom, boom? No, it's because it made its way up. Now, there's very little to create extra gas there, so there's very little of it. Some of it will escape the dynamic cycles of the ground beneath. But ultimately speaking, the gas has actually followed entropic law to make it up there. That'll be up, where it isn't being produced, but still manages to be there. Yeah, that's because it is expanding in all directions. Your pressure gradient, a delta of gas pressure, which would require containment, merely demonstrates the entropic effect in action.
How does that water cycle work again? When water evaporates, where does that go?
Up.
Oh, shit. That's messed up. They keep telling us it goes down.
Back to you tripping over puddles of gases again.
Yeah, man. The damn pesky gases on the floor. I mean, what are these guys smoking, man?
Smoke, you say? Which way does that go?
There you go. I think it goes up. Sideways, maybe a little bit down. I mean, it goes everywhere.
Ah, but carbon dioxide does go down, go boom, boom, right? We're all swimming around in layers of carbon dioxide all the time, aren't we?
Aren't you right now? I mean...
No. I mean, obviously, if I release a load of carbon dioxide temporarily, it's more dense than the air that it's been dispersed into, but it's still just got gaps between it everywhere, so eventually it'll just mix in with the anisotropic, inhomogeneous mixture of gases we already have. With entropy, it's called dispersion. It'll disperse eventually. That's why you open your windows if you have a gas leak, so that it can all disperse. Obviously, if it was all going down, go boom, boom, it would never reach the windows.
That section above our heads that they call a vacuum, would that be considered a gap for the gas to fill? Do you think?
Yeah, that would be an area of volume. And as per gas law, that volume would be an area with available microstates. So you're going to fill that if you're a gas.
Gap.
Gaps, yeah, big gap.
It's not being filled by the gas.
No, it would be if it was real. That would be a violation of the second law of thermodynamics if it was actually the case, Chocolate. Exactly as they claim. So what they claim, a gap for gas to fill, part of the V, the volume, that would be space. So gas would be filling it and isn't. No, that just means space isn't real because we have entropic law. Gas would disperse into it. And we'd all be dead. So space is fake. Happily, we're all alive, breathing high-pressure gas. It's not dispersing into an area of volume called the sky vacuum, otherwise known as outer space. Space is fake.
Yeah, I just want to address this guy in chat called, what's his name? Kevin Conrad. He says, tomorrow night, the first all-civilian mission to orbit, 4 regular civilians orbiting the Earth at 357 miles in Crew Dragon. Flirts will call them liars and masons because that is their only argument. And my response was, that's going to be a really great series, but you watch, I promise you, that thing that they're in, it'll be flying either east to west or west to east, and it won't be going in any other direction, right? So what's going to be the explanation? Oh, it's because of, I don't know, whatever they're going to come up with, right? But if the Earth's a flat plane, a level plane, right, and there's only one direction that they can go, and it's either east to west or west to east, right? Because everything's around the bullseye in the middle. But if it's a sphere, they can go in 359 other directions. 359 other directions will make it a sphere, but they'll happen to be, by coincidence, just that one direction, and it'll be east to west or west to east. You watch.
With that, I'm going to say if you are watching this on either Nathan Oakley 1980 or Nathan Oakley premiering streams, then stay tuned, as there will be an after show to follow. Unfortunately, if you are watching this live, this is where we bid you farewell. So a huge, massive, enormous thank you to all of you who smashed the super chat, liked, commented, shared, subscribed, hit the PayPal link, and became a Nathan Oakley 1980 channel member. Also, if you are watching this, stay tuned. There's going to be an after show to follow. I've been Nathan Oakley, and I'll see you all in the next video.
What a day! What a lovely day!